It is your Wednesday daily delivery. I'm Michael Rand. Happy to have you guys all back for another day. Good show coming up today. Phil Miller, beat writer for the Star Tribune, who covers the Twins, will join me here in a few minutes to talk about season ahead. Season starts tomorrow. It almost feels impossible that that is the case, especially if you stepped outside this morning and felt the cool 10-degree air. Spring in Minnesota, right? But it's happening. They're down in Kansas City for that series. Then they'll go to Miami. Then they're back here for the home opener 1 week from tomorrow. And a sense of optimism growing around this team, which I sensed when I talked to Lavelle last week, which I sensed when I talked to Phil. And there are genuine reasons to be hopeful about this team, and I think it starts with the pitching. Phil and I will get into that in here in just a few minutes, like I said. You also get hear from Dave St. Peter, Twins president. Caught up with him yesterday. They introduced a new scoreboard, some other enhancements at the ballpark. I asked Dave about those things, so I'll run that interview with you, just a short one, but I'll play that for you as well ahead of the opener. And again, the home opener not for a little over a week from now, so you won't see those things for a little while, but thought it was good to get that to you now. Got some Timberwolves thoughts at the end of the show. Good story from Chris Hine on Mike Conley Jr. A lot of the things that I've been thinking about expressed in his story by Chris Finch, by Conley himself, just what he has meant to this team, especially during this latest 4-game winning streak. First, though, what did I miss? I want to talk Vikings a little bit at the jump here, just because, right in the middle of the league meetings, we've heard from Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, Kevin O'Connell, the Wilf ownership group, Mark Wilf, down at the owners meetings, down at the league meetings. A couple interesting things I thought O'Connell said in particular, one from Mark Wilf too. And some of this plays into what I talked about some on the Access Vikings podcast that came out on Tuesday night. Recorded that with Ben Gessling and Andrew Kramer. Ben down at the owners meetings, down at the league meetings here to hear from all these guys and to understand all the rules changes, things like that. But, I'm still having a little bit of a hard time grasping the plan this offseason for the Vikings. I kind of felt like I saw where it was headed early in the league year a couple of weeks ago when, they made a couple hard decisions. They cut Eric Kendricks, cut Adam Thielen, and they started making some other moves to go around the edges. No Patrick Peterson anymore, no Dalvin Tomlinson anymore. A lot of veterans who were commanding pretty big salaries, not on this roster anymore. And it kind of felt like, okay, they were buying into this idea that 2023, while not being a rebuild in the classic sense, was at least the year where they were going to make their transition, and that by 2024, there was going to be a pretty significant new flavor on this team with a lot of new pieces, more cap space next year, things like that. And I feel like the plan is stalled right now. That doesn't mean it's derailed, doesn't mean it's changed. It's just kind of stalled right now because of two things. One, I don't think we have clarity yet on the quarterback situation. I know what they did with Kirk Cousins and not extending him, making it so they have an out after this season, gives you kind of the notion that they could go a different direction. But I don't know what they're going to do ultimately there, and that gives me kind of pause to understand, okay, what exactly do they think about that going forward? And so Kevin O'Connell was asked about that, kind of asked about Cousins' status, and he said about Cousins, he said, this will be really cool for him to be in the same system, calling the same formations, same plays. Cousins hasn't had the same offensive play caller. This is from Ben's story, in back-to-back years since 2015-16. So it's been a long time. I do think that'll help Cousins this year, but O'Connell went on to say that he and Cousins have great rapport. Quote, so I'm just excited to see him in year two. My goal in 2023 is one of the best seasons Kirk Cousins has had playing quarterback in the NFL. When that happens, I think it's a really good thing for him and the Vikings. So, again, you would never close the book on Kirk Cousins being here longer than this year. And, just as a thought exercise, if you went through all the NFC quarterbacks right now, I don't know there's a lot of them that you'd rather have than Kirk Cousins. And some of that's by default, and some of that's by his achievement. So, still the lack of clarity at quarterback makes me wonder kind of what they're up to this year and beyond. The other thing that makes me wonder what they're up to is They just haven't done anything yet with Zadarius Smith and Dalvin Cook. And we talked about that quite a bit on Access Vikings, and I think a trade is still a possibility for either or both of those players. Zadarius Smith, that situation just kind of complicated by, he's not exactly happy with his contract situation. I think he would like to go somewhere else based on that, but the Vikings could have pretty easily created more cap space earlier this offseason if they had simply moved on from those guys in that kind of window where they could have, especially Zadarius Smith. They could have created more cap space there. So it's hard to imagine them cutting Zadarius Smith at this point. He's still a valuable player, but after signing Marcus Davenport, after still having Daniil Hunter, hard to imagine they're going to pay three edge rushers that much money to play in this system this year. So that piece of it's interesting to me. The Dalvin Cook piece is interesting to me, and I just don't quite know where they're headed with those guys. And again, Ben talked me down a little bit on Access Vikings, said, you know what? I get it, but this is not going to look the same in June or July that it does at the end of March. And I think that happens in a lot of sports. You get kind of fired up about what happens early. You think that's going to be the picture going forward, and then they make subtle moves along the way, and then the full picture at the end ends up looking like, okay, this makes sense. I still just don't feel like this roster makes sense or this plan makes sense to me. So I want to know. I'd like to just fast forward and know what it's going to look like, I guess is what I'm saying. But we'll try to exercise some patience, see what they're able to do in the draft, what they're able to do going forward like that. But I just still feel like they want to be, competitive, that they're not ever going to fully commit to something where they're not going to have a chance to at least be a 500 team. And I don't know if that's a model. That's one way to go about it. I don't know if that's the way I would go about it. Mark Wilf saying we want to be super competitive every time we step on the field every season. We feel we're going to be strong. Of course, division winners, we're going to be strong. We know there's strong teams in our division now, and we have to never take anything for granted. I think that's why they're working every single day to turn over every stone, if you will, to just keep getting better. So I don't think they're ever going to bottom out, and maybe that's okay. If you bottom out sometimes, you don't come back up for a very long time. I just wish they were a little bit more committed to a rebuild this year than I sense they are right now. I wish they were committed a little bit more to a bigger kind of, okay, 2023 might not be the greatest year, but if we pivot right now, there could be better years ahead. I don't sense they're there yet. I think that might be a better strategy, and maybe that'll emerge. Maybe we will see more evidence of that as time goes on. Right now, I'm just not seeing it.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake. With 24/7 gaming, the good times never have to end. And you can satisfy your cravings at our restaurants and bars. Or relax in one of our luxurious hotel rooms. Those that play together, stay together. And don't forget to join Club M so you can spark new memories and bask in the rewards along the way. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
Let's talk baseball today. Phil Miller, Twins beat writer for the Star Tribune, joins me. Season opener just around the corner, Phil, Thursday in Kansas City. A lot of intrigue around this team. I was asking you before we started recording. Our colleague Lavelli Neal III put a specific pinpoint on a win total, 91 for this season, which is in line reasonably with projections, with what you might think for this team. And I asked you if you share that same reasonable sense of optimism, and you said 89. So it sounds like, everybody who's been in Florida likes some of the looks of this team. What do you, right off the bat, Phil, what is there to like in your mind in particular?
It does strike me that we are like this every year. You don't go through a month of spring training and walk away thinking, wow, what a waste of time. Those guys are terrible.
Right.
It's the typical let's go optimism. But I do think in my season preview for Thursday, I was talking to Thad Levine about this team and about their recent history, and he said something that kind of struck a chord after watching these guys in spring training, which is that yes, we do not have a number one starter. There is not a Justin Verlander. There's not a Garrett Cole. There's not a Max Scherzer on this team. But this year, when I look at our staff, I think we don't have a number 4 or number 5 starter either. That the 5 guys in our rotation, 6 with Bailey Ober, who would be in the rotation under any other circumstance. Practically, is that all five guys you would recognize on other teams as being their number 2 or number 3 guys. That they don't have a reclamation project at the end of the rotation anymore. I hate to name names, but let's go Jay Happ, Matt Shoemaker, Chris Archer, Homer Bailey, Hector Santiago. They have filled out the rotation with guys that you cross your fingers when they're out there. Thad said that they feel like in the great majority of nights, they will probably have the better starting pitcher on the mound. And even if they don't, they'll be competitive. So that is a change, and that they are pinning a lot of their hopes on the health of the rotation, which, considering 2 guys are coming back from major injuries, it's still we need to see it to believe it. But I was impressed with the quality of starting pitching that they were getting in Florida, particularly with Bailey Ober, but really all 5 looked sharp. Sonny Gray looks like he could be an ace at 33. He's not going to be a young ace like a Garrett Cole, but it's the pitching that makes you think that the Twins might be a little better than people expect this year. And when was the last time you could say that about a Twins rotation?
It's been a while. I do think that is, as I kind of watched them assemble this, especially after they went out and got Lopez in the Arise trade, and you're like, okay, that kind of adds to this kind of idea of 2s and 3s and a guy who's maybe more even established and younger in that in that mix. I thought that was the reason for optimism from the beginning, including, when you pair that with what looks like when guys are healthy again, and we'll see how much Buxton plays in the outfield. We'll see how much this, that's impacting the outfield defense. But when healthy, it looks like the defense will be pretty good, at least up the middle in particular, with, Vasquez catching or Jeffers on off nights. Good outfield defense, even if Buxton is DHing on a certain night. Correa up the middle. They've got some pieces defensively to complement what they're doing pitching wise. So that does feel to me like it's a reason to think that this could be pretty good. Now, you mentioned Sonny Gray. How many innings will they be allowed to go? Because Sonny is already itching for more than 4 or 5. That was an interesting kind of, I don't know, side note from earlier this week, but just him expressing just the want to maybe have a different philosophy or different goal as a staff going forward, that 4 or 5 innings as a starting pitcher is not customary, or is not what they want to aspire to, and maybe shouldn't be from the other side either.
Yeah, Sonny's main objective was how his main complaint, I guess, was how by middle of the season last year, there was a feeling around the team that if you go 4 innings, if you go 5 innings, you've done your job. That's all they can ask out of you. They had Chris Archer and they had Dylan Bundy. Now, Chris Archer was dealing with some health things, but was trying to pitch through it. But 4 or 5 innings was about his limit. Dylan Bundy was healthy, but Dylan tended to run up the pitch count, and he is a classic third time through guy. Twins are very, very leery of sending their pitchers out for the third time through the order, and there's a reason for it. They are one of the worst teams in the league with last year's staff at getting guys out the third time they face them. I think they were in the bottom 5 in the big leagues in slugging percentage when hitters see a pitcher third time through. So it became more than a philosophy. It became routine, and it became accepted. And Sonny Gray was saying, that's not accepted. I can do more. I want to do more. And, that's what I'm getting paid for. He said that, I do think it was a not very subtle shot at Chris Archer and at Dylan Bundy, but he said that this staff are pretty uniform in wanting to go longer. Rocco said at the beginning of camp that pitchers will go deeper into games this year. We'll see if that's true. I know they are still handling Kenta Maeda with care, coming back from Tommy John surgery, so he might be the exception. But the result of all the short starts, and they had the most in the majors last year, was a tired bullpen, and they fought and fought to try to keep these guys feeling fresh. They went through the most pitchers that they ever have in their history, and it's a lot less effective. So there is good reason to hope that that's the case, and that Sonny Gray said it on the record was entertaining, and I know it warmed a lot of hearts among the fandom.
It did. It wasn't like, it didn't feel like it was so much controversial as it was kind of expressing something that maybe a lot of us noticed last year. And I do think that there was an element last year where, with the labor stoppage or labor, with the labor stuff going on at the early part of camp last year, and then things just all of a sudden starting up, I think maybe at the beginning there was some cause to pause and, have these guys work a little bit more carefully. And, they're coming off strange seasons. It's still the COVID season. Anybody who was young probably still hadn't thrown a lot of innings. Like Joe Ryan had missed an entire, minor league season, I would think, in 2020. So I think there were some legitimate reasons to be careful early, but I did think it got to the point where it was a little bit ridiculous sometimes when a guy was cruising and he'd be pulled after 5 innings, because that's what we do around here. So I would love to see them go deeper. And I think as a function of having a better pitching staff, which I think you're right, that is the strength of this team. Maybe that is something they can do. See guys go 6, 7, maybe 8 innings from time to time, as long as the pitch counts are down. How much do you think the pace, the way the game is played, does that factor in at all to, if these games are going to be shorter, if they might be a little bit crisper, maybe that would help pitchers stay out there a little bit longer too at times?
Yeah, and that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because there's two schools of thought to that. I know that Rocco expressed early on that conditioning is going to be important, because there's going to be, you can't catch your breath, you can't slow it down. But I think towards the end, there was a thought that there's an energy to the game now that you're tired afterwards, but it doesn't fatigue you that much. Rocco is very aware of a guy who has a difficult inning. He throws 25 or 30 pitches, then he sits down, and the team goes out 1, 2, 3, and the pitcher's back out there within a couple of minutes. He might pull some guys there. I think that's concerning to him, but there is a sense that the faster games might actually be good for pitchers to get them going a little bit longer. That the slog of the game is actually more tiring than playing it faster. So that does enter a really unknown element to this season.
When you and I talked last time you were on about some of these rule changes, and you've written about them quite a bit for the lead up to the season, kind of the special previews that you've written. I mean, I imagine it's not much different than it was 2-3 weeks ago last time we talked, but it just kind of feels like there is still this momentum where people are on board with this, that we're still going to be kind of waiting and seeing how things are enforced or how the shifts really impact things once things get going. But it does feel like there's a certain sense of optimism, or a certain sense of curiosity, at least, for people to see how this impacts the game, and people maybe expecting it to impact it in a positive way.
Well, yeah, that was definitely the case in Florida, and it surprised me. I thought that there would be, there'd be a lot of complaints. I thought there'd be many, many times more complaints than we heard about you're affecting how I pitch by insisting on this clock, by speeding it up. And I will say that it's not entirely clear that it will continue in the regular season, but they're in Florida, they're in Arizona. The sooner they get out of here, the sooner they can go meet family for dinner and play a round of golf. In the regular season, now the stats count. Now you're affecting my livelihood if I can't think through how to get through this inning. So there might be, it might change things. Spring training is not real life. But that said, everyone was so positive, far more positive about it than I expected, that I think some of those good feelings will carry over. The other thing is, the great majority of fans don't pay much attention to spring training. And so they haven't experienced this. They haven't been to a game at Target Field or turned on the TV to watch a Twins game, and I think they will be surprised and really enjoy the new pace of the game, because the rule works, and if the players and the umpires have all bought in, as they seem to in Florida and Arizona, it's going to be the largest change in the game that I can think of since the designated hitter.
Wow.
I suppose the pandemic was a big change.
Well, yeah, but that's still,
but it was temporary. But
the runner on second rule that came from that and stayed, that was a pretty big change. But that doesn't impact. I mean, this impacts every single game. That impacts 6% of games or whatever goes to extra innings.
I just think turning on a game, the Twins night home game start at 6:40. I think those games often being over by 9:15 instead of 9:45, 10 and past. I'm not entirely speaking as somebody who has newspaper deadlines around those hours, but yes, it's great for the writers, but I think the fans are really going to enjoy it. I don't think most have. You've probably read about it and heard about it, but it's noticeable when you look up at the end, but it's not really noticeable during the game. You don't think, wow, how come that guy isn't walking around and adjusting his gloves? How come the pitcher is on the mound right away? You don't even notice it. It is, like I say, I thought they were messing with a disaster after hearing the minor leaguers talk about how much they disliked it last year. But the group think this is great, and I'll bet fans agree.
Same amount of pay for a shorter work week, Phil. You can't argue with that. So that said, if Joey Gallo is batting leadoff for this team, you could still see a lot of 7, 8, 9 pitch at bats to start the game. That'll slow it down, at least from the jump. Do you think that's their leadoff hitter against right-handed pitching? And then how does the lineup kind of flow from there with what we know about injuries, health, who they like and don't like coming out of camp?
I do think that Joey Gallo will be a frequent leadoff hitter against right-handed pitching, and you can see the thinking behind it. For one thing, he just led the league in walks a couple of years ago. He's the Twins haven't had a 100 walk guy since the early part of Joe Mauer's career. He's a guy that gets on base a lot, and he's kind of an all or nothing guy. He also strikes out more than anybody else, Miguel Sano like, but he's a power hitter, and I think back to the how happy the Twins were with Max Kepler in his big power year in 2019 as the leadoff hitter, and we asked more than once, he's hitting home runs to start these games a couple times a week, and Rocco's response was, "Well, what's wrong with that? It's a good way to start games." So it's an interesting look. They just don't really have any speed on the team. For as much as Rocco talked about, we're going to play a crisper, livelier, faster game. They don't really have a lot of guys to steal a lot of bases, and they're more inclined to use an on-base guy, which, weird as it is kind of Joey, kind of Joey Gallo against left-handed pitching. I think for now, until Jorge Polanco comes back, we'll probably see whoever is filling in for him, whether it is Kyle Farmer or Donovan Solano. Probably one of those guys are good on-base guys against left-handers. So I don't think they're going to see many left-handers early in the season, not in Kansas City or Miami, but I think that could be the lineup settling in, and then depending on how Buxton's season is going, maybe he moves up to that spot a little bit later.
Oh man, it's just like when Gardy used to just throw Mike Redmond in the 3 spot when Mauer was out, huh? Hey, a catcher's got to bat third. Sorry, a second baseman's got to bat first. Is that how it's going to go?
Well, and Gardy's big thing was, a bunter has to bat second, which is no longer the case.
That is no longer the case. No.
No, I think Carlos Correa will be the second hitter pretty routinely. That's where he likes to hit, and that's where they like to hit him too. So it's funny. Last year, every talk, every thought about the Twins going into the season was Carlos Correa and how transformative he would be, but it would only be for 1 year. Shockingly, he is back now, and it's almost like he's taken for granted now. And it's like, well, what else do the Twins have? He has kind of flown a little under the radar this spring, and I'll be interested to see now that he's got his legacy contract. Now that he's settled in, he can make this place his home for good baseball wise. I'll be interested to see what kind of season he has, and if we see even more from him.
Yeah, and I think he's certainly, when healthy, I think this lineup has enough pieces. But if we're talking about Polanco, talking about Kirilloff still not ready, we're talking about Buxton kind of getting eased into things, hitting a lot, DHing, but maybe not playing the outfield as much. I still think the question, and I don't think anybody would disagree with this necessarily, the question is, are they going to score enough runs this year? Are they going to score more than they did last year when they had they were basically league average last year, scored about 700 runs. Do you think they're better than last year offensively, or about the same, or potentially worse? Where do you think that falls?
Well, it kind of pivots on a couple of players. I think Jose Miranda is a critical one. I mean, when you say they had league average, they had the quintessential league average hitter in Gio Urshela in the lineup, and they want, he had a good year, and they really liked him, but they want more, and that's kind of up to. They really think Jose Miranda provides that. They really like. He has improved every year of his career once he gets comfortable. If that happens again, I think they feel really good about it. You mentioned Buxton. He only played 90-some games last year, 92, I think it was. The plan, it just seems like the plan is to sacrifice his defense, which it's not really that much of a sacrifice with Taylor, but still get him in the lineup early. Thad Levine told me, we'll give up the defense early in order to have the defense and offense late. It's their annual, how can we keep Byron Buxton healthy? It's the same as year after year. Where Buxton goes, so seems this team.
Yeah, well, let's finish up, Phil, with maybe just a quick look around the division, around the league. I mean, it feels like they start in Kansas City. They're definitely in a pretty substantial rebuild. Detroit maybe a little bit further along in that process, but we still don't know what to expect from there. Cleveland was very good last year. Chicago was pretty disappointing last year. How do you think this team stacks up with the rest of the AL Central? And acknowledging that maybe that's not quite as important as it used to be with the way the playoffs work now, and obviously with the way the schedule works this year, where they're going to see every single team, they're going to see much less of their own division. Where do you think they are competitively, though, within this AL Central this year?
Well, it really comes down to is Cleveland, can they do it again? And I think they can. Cleveland accomplished what the Twins aspired to. They ushered in a new set of young players, just like the Twins are hoping to do with Miranda and Larnach and Wallner and Joe Ryan and Duran. The Guardians brought in Andres Gimenez, Ahmed Rosario. They finally fixed their outfield with guys like Miles Straw, Stephen Kwan. I think they are substantially better and suited for the long term now. And of course, Shane Bieber at the top of the rotation. I saw that Tristan McKenzie is going to be out for a couple of months, and that's the kind of injury that'll keep him in and out. So that significantly weakens the Guardians, I think, because they were kind of top heavy with their top two pitchers. But I think that the Guardians look like the Twins' chief competitor, and I think that the Twins probably have a better lineup, and I know they feel like they have the better pitching staff. The White Sox match up well with the Twins in the front line, but the Twins have so much more depth behind them. The White Sox have a lot of guys that, if they have good years and if they stay healthy, they're the team that they could be the team to beat. But if they have to dip into their AAA team, that's going to open the door for the Twins. I do think the Twins I do think it's a two-team. I would say I think it's a two-team race if everybody stays healthy between the Twins and Guardians. I do like their chances. I think the addition of Pablo Lopez and the keeping Carlos Correa are going to be the two moves that end up decide the division.
Very well could be, and we'll find out some of those answers really soon. Thursday opener in Kansas City. Phil will be there. Home opener a week from Thursday, hoping for slightly warmer weather than what we had on Tuesday for the unveiling of the new scoreboard and other such things. It was chilly out there, to say the least. They're not quite ready to host a game yet at Target Field, I don't think.
Yeah, maybe they can move into the Vikings stadium for a couple of weeks. That first series, that's against the Astros. It's against the world champions. It's interesting. The Twins looked totally outclassed by the Astros last year. Part of it was timing when they played, but they did not win a game against the Astros last year. 0-6 or 0-7.
Yeah, and a lot of the scores were pretty lopsided too, were they not?
Yes, it was not a competitive matchup, and that is a really interesting home opener weekend. I think we'll find out a lot about the Twins right off the bat.
We will indeed, and you will find it out from Phil Miller. Good stuff, Phil. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, Mike. Good talking to you.
I appreciate Phil hopping on with me today. He's been busy down in Fort Myers and now getting ready to head to Kansas City. In fact, he might be there already by now as you listen to this. One side note, if you're looking for even more optimism, it's not just the beat writers who think that the Twins are going to be pretty good. The Baseball Prospectus projected standings has the Twins with 88 wins this year, and a 71% chance of making the postseason. So there you have it. People think that this is going to be a pretty good team based on the roster. And I think, like Phil and I talked about, it all will come down to pitching. Now, a little bit off the beaten path, but still something that has something to do with the fan experience at Target Field. Caught up with Dave St. Peter just yesterday to talk a little bit more about the bigger scoreboard, things like that. So here is Dave St. Peter, president of the Twins.
All this is obviously aimed at game day experience, and even though this ballpark isn't that old, we're talking about 13 years into the Target Field experience. What do you hope that the video board, all the enhancements do for you guys?
Well, I mean, it's the 14th year. When we moved in here, they told us the video boards would last a decade. So we ended up getting 13 years out of them. Maybe 12 and a half if I count the 2020 COVID year where we played 60 games.
Sounds like Minnesotans in their furnaces.
The reality
they stretch them a little bit.
The reality is we needed to do this. But we, I think what I'm grateful for is through our ownership and with the partnership of the Ballpark Authority, we didn't just replace things like for like. We were able to make things, in our mind, markedly better with not just the best technology, but we were able to expand and create some additional places for some video product that I think will be great for fans, not just in terms of entertainment factor during games, but also for showcasing some of the multitudes of information that we can provide fans around the game itself, the what's going on around Major League Baseball, what might be happening this spring with the Wild or the Timberwolves playing at the same time.
Sure.
There's a lot of things we can do, and I'm thankful for that, in addition to having the ability to add again and reinforce some of the signature branding in the ballpark, updating the celebration sign with all new lighting, bringing back the original Win Twins mark, and then, of course, the new addition of the revolving baseball in right field that serves as a beacon to the city, we think is a pretty cool thing here for our fans.
How much has, again, we're only talking about a little more than a decade, but how much has the fan experience or what fans want changed since even, Target Field opener or when it was first conceptualized? Because it feels like not a lot of time, but it's a lot of time in kind of our expectations sometimes.
Well, I think it's certainly a new generation of fans view the game day experience much differently. For them, it's less about a fixed seat. It's all about the entertainment value. It's all about, frankly, the social experience. So, again, some of today's projects, Scoreboard 2.0, is aimed to pay that off in terms of how we use some of this real estate and really reinforce that. Those are really the ticket buying fans of the future, and ultimately, you've seen us cater to them in the past, and we're going to continue to evolve Target Field to meet that demand.
Can you warm it up a little bit for April 6th?
We're working on it. Thankfully, the sun's out today, but I don't worry so much about the home opener. It's the other 80 games I worry about. So
thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
All right, you're welcome.
Now, I posted video of the new scoreboard on Twitter, and some people were into it, and some people were like, I'd love to see them add to the sixth biggest payroll, or is this gonna? Where's the scoreboard gonna bat in the batting order? Things like that. Like, people are still skeptical about this team, skeptical about ballpark enhancements that have nothing to do with the team, and I get that. But this is a completely different thing. This is totally different than the team, the payroll. This is something entirely new, entirely separate from that. So, people are going to be negative, whatever. I think when I was down there looking at the scoreboard, it stood out. It is huge. It is pretty nice definition-wise. So, when you're there, take a notice of it, see what you think. It's not going to change how they play on the field. I get that's fine. But, you can separate your skepticism for the team from, hey, this is kind of a cool new gadget they've got in addition to some of the other things they've done at the ballpark. Let's finish with the cooler. Mike Conley Jr. cannot overstate his impact, especially in recent games with the Wolves, as he's gotten more comfortable with running the show on this team. Chris Hine, good story on what he's been able to do. Some good quotes from Chris Finch in the story. Quote from Finch: "He's the perfect piece in my estimation. He really is. He can make all the big plays. He can run the offense. He can get the ball to the guys where and when they need." Finch also talking about how you don't have to hide him on defense, which they had to do earlier in the year. And again, Finch didn't name names, but it's pretty clear that the upgrade to Conley from D'Angelo Russell on the defensive end. And again, none of this is necessarily a D'Lo bashing session. It's just that these are different players, and what we talked about when Conley came in terms of fit seems to be playing out right now. Conley, interested in helping this team and kind of getting a better sense of what he's needing to do on this team, saying it helps me a lot knowing I have a better feel on the offense, better feel of timing, the areas on the floor people are effective late in games, and also the areas where people aren't effective late in games, so I can stay away from certain actions late. It limits our turnovers, it limits our areas, and allows us to get better shots and chances to be efficient. That's a pro. That's a veteran pro point guard right there. He's helped them win 4 games in a row. A lot of big ones left, including tonight against Phoenix, expecting the return of Kevin Durant in that game. Big one in the standings. Wolves right there in that massive jumble. They've already gone 2-0 on this road trip. One more against Phoenix. If they can get this one, man, that would be an unbelievable road trip. Even if they don't win tonight, you got to feel pretty good about a 2-1 West Coast trip against 3 playoff contenders. So we'll see where that gets them. Big one for the Wild tonight, too, against Colorado. Good night of TV viewing. Check that all out, and I'm sure we'll talk about that plenty on Thursday's show. I'll have Chip Scoggins tomorrow as well. I'm sure we'll have a bunch of stuff to talk about. Vikings, Twins, plenty of other topics to get to. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. I'm Michael Rand, back at it again tomorrow.